What's interesting to me, and I did not remember, was that it was not science that solved the question, it was the courts. And the courts, how far up Dr. Richards took it to the courts, refused to take the test that Olympic athletes had to take, refused to take it, I would speculate, because was afraid that it would not pass the test. You know, that is not in the film. What the audience is left to make its own choice. Why did Dr. Richards refuse to take the test? But went the legal route. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, and you know, this wasn't really part of the. I wanted to mention in the movie, and I think it's interesting. There's a funny story that Renee recounts about the court case. You know, the USTA is a very old and prestigious, you know, organization, and they had, you know, top lawyers from a very, you know, high class law firm. And Renee, somebody said to Renee, "Well, who would you have to go up against these, you know, this team of lawyers?" And she said, "Oh, I had Roy Cohen." And the person said, "Oh, well, they were clearly overmatched." So
Roy Cohen was
Roy Cohen's office. It was Michael Rosen from Roy Cohen's office. So, you know, just to make it even more.
And that's not in the movie.
That's not. I couldn't open up that can of worms.
It is a can of worms,
yeah.
but it also says why Renee Richards won.
Well, it does and it doesn't. I think that she won, and I didn't want that also to be misunderstood. She won. Michael Rosen, who worked for her, for Roy, argued the case. The case was won because it was won under civil liberties. Her civil rights were her civil rights were you know, discriminated against, and that's why she didn't have, you know, and that's why she won.
It's interesting because today the debate still is going on, and and it really has to do with, are men and women the same, or men and women essentially different? And what's interesting in your film is that the female tennis players that supported Renee were in fact very well-known tennis players, but were closeted lesbians. Billie Jean King had not come out. She was the first one to step up and say, I'll play any. She played a man and beat him, you know. And I don't believe Martina was out at that point when she also felt this sense of compassion for this other person who was different and being discriminated against. But I found it interesting that it was the closeted lesbians, as opposed to Chrissy Everett, who was like almost a heterosexual pinup as a tennis player. Could you talk a little bit about how you went through that part of the story?
Well, you know, if you're a closeted lesbian and you have your own stuff going on, and all of a sudden walks Renee Richards, I think it's going to be a little bit easier to deal with your own, you know, coming out. Well, if Renee can do it, you know, what's a little lesbian if you know? I'm just kidding. Not to take it lightly. The truth is that Renee was a pioneer. What Renee stands for is to be true to yourself. If that's the only takeaway from this movie, then it's been a successful movie.
You know, I think you do very successfully frame the story around being true to oneself. But the question also is raised, not explicitly in the film, but I think in resonance, is what is a man and what is a woman? And that question is a very hard one to have a public debate about today because of everyone, the political correctness around the issues. Now, Dr. Richards, as a person, we meet Renee older in life. She has a difficult relationship with her child. You present that relationship in a pretty raw way and show how both sides, both the father and the son, has still not repaired whatever damage, and it's on both sides. Could you talk a little bit about how you did that, how you got permission from Renee to talk about that, and how you involved the son?
Sure. Well, Renee was pretty much, once she was on board, she was an open book and said, you know, whatever you want to do, and she was a great partner as a subject. You know, her son is a fascinating person as well. First of all, he's highly intelligent.
Is he gay or not?
You know,
It was hard to tell from the
It
film.
was hard to tell in life. You know, I don't think
He didn't present himself.
He didn't present himself as gay. He was engaged for 12 years, but you know, it was very difficult to get him on board at first. But you know, I stayed with it. The thing about this Nikki is that on the one hand, people say, hey, you know, look, you're 39 years old, go out, you know, handle it, you know, just, you know, do what you got to do to get over this and become the adult that you should be now. Stop blaming somebody. But on the other hand, I have no right to say that. I can't judge him because I don't know what it's like to have a father, a role model. Arguably, he was such an important early person in your life that you look up to, who becomes a woman. And so I can't judge it. I don't know. I mean, and I think that comes across in the film, but I tried to just let the cameras show it I don't comment on it at all.
It's not resolved.
Right.
But what I felt was that this is a locked relationship. Both of them have not walked away, no matter what they've done. They're very locked in this father-son, mother-son relationship. The last question I want to ask about is, everyone wants to know about sex when it's transsexuals, and Christine Jorgensen had talked about sex, and Christine Jorgensen was the first public transsexual, wound up living in Provincetown in a self-defined lesbian relationship with another woman, which some called a very kinky heterosexual relationship. And we see that Renee Richards, although Renee Richards talks about having had a lot of sex, a lot of kinky sex, it's just like it flips out and that's it. That's the only reference to sexuality at all. So it doesn't seem to be about sexuality. It seems to be about identity.
You know, I couldn't have said that any better. What I found making this film is it's not about sexuality. At first, going into it, I thought, oh, maybe she was gay and she wanted to do this. I didn't know. But what's more important than sex is identity, who you are. Who we are. The narrative that we see ourselves, and then there's the narrative that others see us. And that is the most important thing about Renee. The way she sees herself, the way she identifies herself is more important than sex or anything else.
Well, you certainly gave great dignity and respect to Renee Richards, and I think that that's the most important thing, that people have to start at that place when they're dealing with someone they don't understand or someone's different. And certainly in the field of the athletic field, that is, we've had athletes come out over the years. Renee Richards was the first transsexual to come out.
In front of the world, too.
It's
not like the athlete who finishes their career and says, oh, by the way, I was gay the whole time. This is a person in front of the world who came out.
Well, some would say also that Renee Richards liked every moment of the attention, that she was an exhibitionist, and that is a component of transsexualism. In the book, The Boy Who Would Be Queen, they talk about two categories of transsexuals. One is that father's paratrooper, successful male who decides that, in fact, he feels that he is a woman, and it usually has to do with eroticizing oneself in female clothing. The other side is the pretty gay boy who really wants to sleep with straight men. I'm really encapsulating that book in a very cheap sort of way, but it raised some very interesting questions, because coming out of the theater, I overheard two people having this conversation. And one was saying, a man is a man is a man, no matter what they call themselves or how they dress. And the other person was saying, that's really unfair, because Renee Richards is a woman. And I think that, I wish I had been able to hear the rest of that conversation, because that's, I think, what your film, at least for me, accomplished. One, respect to the individual, respect for the athlete, and raising not about does someone have a right to do to their body what he or she wants to. I think that I certainly believe that Renee Richards had the right to do whatever Renee Richards wanted to do to their body. But what does it mean in the end? Those questions. What is a man? What is a woman? So how did you deal with your own bias?
I really tried to be as objective as possible. I mean, I have an opinion on whether it was fair, and I've never publicly talked about it. Look, everybody who writes a book, makes a film, does a piece of art has an opinion. But the key is to, when you're making a film, is let the camera do the work. Just absorb everybody else's opinion and just showcase it, and then let people decide.
Is there anything that I haven't covered, given the discussion that we've had, that you would want to say before we close?
No, I think you're very exhaustive and in a good way. We covered everything. Very extensive is a better word. I really just hope that this film, is well received by a large amount of people for a lot of reasons.
Well, you've managed to not make it just an exotic story, We live in a time of tabloid journalism, and a lot of the documentaries since Michael Moore have sort of gone that way, about entertainment, make it funny. Serious subject, but make it funny, make it, please. And I think you've really challenged your audiences in a way that I hope that Dr. Richards is pleased with the way you presented her.
She is.
Okay, thank you.